Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a recap of the college football playoff semifinal game between TCU and Michigan. First off, what a game. Both of the games last night were absolutely spectacular. Ohio State, Georgia, the nightcap, fantastic game. TCU, Michigan right before that, another great game. This is what we want as college football fans. This is what we want. Great games, games that mean something, come down to the final couple plays, and that's what we got. All right, so going into TCU versus Michigan, everyone thought Michigan's offense was going to be able to run on TCU's 3-3-5 defense. Me personally, I thought Michigan was going to be able to run the ball very well, but it ended up being the opposite. Because at the end of the day, I think TCU ran the ball more efficiently than Michigan did. With that said, on the very first play of the game for Michigan, Donovan Edwards ran for 54 yards right up the middle. They schemed it up. They had the fullback or the tight end in the backfield and the fullback position like in the wing. And he went right up the middle. Edwards followed him. He blocked the middle linebacker and there was no one else left to tackle him. 54 yards. After that, though, Donovan Edwards only had 60 yards rushing the entire game. So he had 54 yards on the very first play. After that, 60 yards. Now, I think a huge part of this was losing the tight end Schoonmaker. He was the guy that made that block on that run. And then back in the Ohio State game, he made a lot of key blocks in moments just like that. When Donovan Edwards would get the ball, he'd stand in the backfield for like a second. He'd read the offensive line, and then he'd cut outside or cut through a hole right behind the right tackle and the tight end. And that tight end was Schoonmaker. So I think losing Schoonmaker hurt Michigan's offense a lot more than people think. But I don't think that's why they lost the game, obviously. There's a lot that went into this loss. First off, turnovers and unlikely turn of events really put Michigan in deep holes in multiple spots. First off, that touchdown to Roman Wilson, I believe it was a touchdown. There was one view that you can see the ball wasn't totally in possession of the receiver when he was down at like the half-yard line. I don't think he had possession. With that said, Michigan should have scored anyways. They got the ball at the half-yard line, and they decided to hand it off. I know this guy's played a decent amount this year, but they decided to hand it off to a guy who's used to playing linebacker. He's a former linebacker. Like, why not just hand it off to Donovan Edwards or QB sneak it? So Michigan missed out there. They ended up fumbling. TCU recovered in the end zone, and it was a touchback. So there's 6 points right there, or I guess 7. You include the extra point, but 7 points missed out by Michigan just on one play right there. But before that, Michigan drove down the field. After that Donovan Edwards 54-yard run, they went right down the field. They got down to like the 4 or 5 yard line. And Jim Harbaugh decided to run the Philly special. For some reason, I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't just run it straight ahead. But instead you do a Philly special to your tight end. He gets out. TCU guard. I guess they covered J.J. McCarthy pretty well. I mean, there wasn't really anything the guy could do. The tight end that got the ball. But he decided to run out to the right. And instead of throwing it away, he took like a 10-yard loss, and TCU ended up getting the ball at like the 15-yard line. If he threw that away, TCU would have had the ball at like the 2 or 3 yard line, and that could have changed things pretty heavily because that definitely changes play calling. TCU could have been conservative, and Michigan could have got the ball in excellent field position, but instead TCU got the ball back. They went down the field. Max Duggan ended up running it in for a touchdown. So there's just 2 plays right there. Michigan missed out on 14 points, and it went right back the other way. And TCU ended up being up in this game 21-3 at one point. It did end up being 21-6 right before the half. But J.J. McCarthy, he threw 2 pick sixes in this game. Other than those 2 interceptions, I will say J.J. McCarthy put on an absolute show. He had 50 yards on the ground. He made a lot of big plays and big moments, a lot of third down runs. He also ran in a touchdown later on in the game. We had 340 passing yards. I don't think anyone saw that coming, given how TCU plays defense. Like I said, everyone thought Michigan was just going to run the ball. It was actually the opposite, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. JJ McCarthy had to throw the ball all game. When you get down like Michigan was, 21-6, it was also like 38-22 at one point. You're forced to throw the ball. You can't waste the clock out, especially when you can't stop the other team. You need to score fast and hope for as many possessions as possible in this game. Ronnie Bell and Roman Wilson, I just want to give props to them real quick. They were running free down the field pretty much all game. Me personally, I was surprised by that. Trevius Hodges-Tomlinson for TCU, he's probably my defensive MVP. Him and D. Winters, who I'll get to in a second, but Hodges-Tomlinson, if he wasn't getting beat for a touchdown, he was making a play. He had 3 pass breakups in this game. 3 pass breakups that were probably saving first down, saving big plays, I would say. He did have a very costly defensive pass interference when he went for the interception. At the very end of the first half, there's like 6 seconds left. McCarthy threw it down to like the 5-yard line, and Hodges-Tomlinson just jumped into the defender. Other than that, he played a terrific game. Ronnie Bell and Roman Wilson, back to them. There's a flea flicker in this game. I think Jim Harbaugh had that dialed up at the perfect time. It was when Michigan was in a pretty bad spot. It started getting momentum back a little bit. He whipped out the flea flicker, and Ronnie Bell ran free for a touchdown. Roman Wilson also had another big play later on in the game. But D. Winters, TCU outside linebacker, he shut down the run game. He was a huge part why Donovan Edwards only had 60 yards after that big run. He had like 3 or 4 tackles for loss in this game. He was all over the backfield. Switching to the other side of the ball, TCU offense versus the Michigan defense. TCU's offense was on fire literally all game. Yes, they got help by their defense getting 14 free points. But other than that, this game was 34-16, and Michigan only stopped them twice the whole game up to that point. That's crazy to think about. Michigan, arguably the best defense in college football, top 3 at worst, just couldn't stop Max Duggan and TCU. Remember, Kendre Miller, TCU starting running back, one of the best running backs in the Big 12 this year. He went down with injury. He had 57 yards prior to getting hurt, averaging 7.1 per carry. So they couldn't stop him whatsoever. And then Amari DiMelia comes in, and he lit the building on fire. He was just running wild all game. Michigan could not tackle him. It took like 2 or 3 guys to get him down. He ended up having 17 carries for 150 yards, 1 touchdown, and averaged nearly 9 yards per carry. I'd say that's a pretty good game. He had a 60-yard run that went down to the 1-yard line, and then he ended up punching it in for a touchdown. Quentin Johnson, the projected first-round pick receiver for TCU. As a Titans fan, I hope he ends up in Tennessee. But that's a story for another day. Quentin Johnson, he had a 76-yard touchdown on a crossing route. I don't know how many players in college football could have scored on that play. He caught like a 4 or 5 yard crossing route. I'd say near the sideline. And Michigan had one defender that could have made a play. He took a terrible angle. I think he underestimated Quentin Johnson's speed, given how big he is. Johnson ran right by him and went right down the sideline. No one was catching him. That 76-yard touchdown capped off his night. He had 6 catches for 163 yards and a touchdown. Max Duggan, he played like a Heisman winner. Yes, he didn't win the Heisman Trophy, but he was at the ceremony, and rightfully so. He showed that last night. The 2 interceptions he threw, I don't put entirely on his shoulders. I don't think they're his fault. A couple batted balls, or I guess tip passes, deflections right to Michigan. One was a drop pass, I think. He finished with 225 passing yards, 57 rushing, and then he had 4 total touchdowns. So he put on a show. He did his job. He was fighting till the very end. You got to remember, the last time we saw Max Duggan, he was playing injured, battling through a lot. Almost led TCU to a Big 12 championship. He bounced back in this game, played his heart out once again, and ended up getting the victory. And TCU is going on to the national championship, and they will be playing Georgia. You guys should go check out my other video. I did a recap on the Georgia-Ohio State game. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.